two incredibly special team members here at SJCS, Tony and Precious, and they have an incredible story. And Tony, a few weeks ago, we were incredibly fearful for what was going on because you had come down with COVID and you were admitted to the hospital. Before we get there, just checking in, how are you doing today? How is recovery going, and what is the latest?
I'm like 90 to 95% better. I'm able to walk now. I'm working on the neighborhood when I can. So I just got a couple of follow-ups to do with my doctors, cardiology for my heart and a lung doctor for my lungs, because the COVID is a beast. It attacks your whole body. And so I'm trying to figure out the after effects, how it affected me. So I'm just doing a couple of follow-ups there, but then I should be ready to go.
Yeah, because they're still figuring out like that this thing morphs and changes, or there's nuances, new ways that it's impacting people, right? And you've experienced that since you've come out of the hospital. That's incredible. Precious, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I am happy. I feel much more relaxed, at ease. I have a different outlook about life. I have a different viewpoint about friends, family, love, everything. Faith, just everything has totally changed. I'm smelling a new batch of roses.
Well, so that is awesome for both of you. I couldn't be happier for both of you, but if you wouldn't mind, let's back up to kind of the beginning of this story, because it got pretty rough pretty fast. Tony, how quickly did you come down with symptoms? Like, walk us through that process, or both of you kind of walk us through the process of you contracting it, getting ill, and then kind of the snowball that just turned into an avalanche from there.
Well, I was feeling sick. Like, it felt like the flu at first. Like, I was having, I lost like 25 pounds through it. I have lost of appetite, couldn't taste anything, coughing, fevers that wasn't relieved by taking the medicine, coughing. I had all the signs and symptoms except for the major one at that time, which is shortness of breath. I didn't have that. But then a week after that, I felt good, but Precious.
No, you went and got tested.
Yeah, I got tested, and then those tests that back then it said 3 to 5 days, but it took like almost 2 weeks before I got my results. And by the time I got my results, that's when I was crashing at home, and I got taken to the hospital with shortness of breath, along with the other signs and symptoms. And then from that point, I went down quickly. Within 24 hours, I was put on a ventilator. I had pneumonia in my left lung.
Both lungs.
Then I went to my right lungs. So I had pneumonia in both my lungs. I started having heart arrhythmias, coughing and sweating uncontrollably. So I was crashing for all intents and purposes. All my vital signs, everything was going down low. And then they had to put me on a ventilator to rest my lungs so that they could work on it.
Wow. Yeah, that's mind blowing. Precious, what was it like to see Tony kind of start to decline so rapidly? Because I remember our check-in calls every morning, and we were asking, have you got his test back? What's going on? And then you still hadn't heard. And then it just all happened so quick. What was it like?
Well, at first it just looked like a regular cold. And Tony is not the one that gets sick all the time. That's me. He can be in the middle of diseases and not catch a thing. I catch everything. So he was, feeling really sick, and I was like, wow. And he had a temperature, and then, the temperature would not break, even with the Tylenol. And so that March 20th, I said, you need to go get tested. And he went and he got tested. And I think I said it on like the next call, or I text you guys, the leadership team, which is my extended family, so I text you guys saying he had to go get tested. But every day that he was home, he was getting progressively worse. And at first I was like, okay, because he was still responsive, if you will. But then towards the end, I started to become really frantic because he just looked so ill. He just did not look good. But he kept saying, I'm okay, calm down. You always worrying about everything. You always so hype about everything. Chill, Press, chill. I said, no, chill. I said, and I was looking through his bags and looking for his pulse ox machine. And he, Tony has bags and bags and bags and bags, and I could not find it. And so I text, Cherie calls and checks on me, Cherie Young, checks on me 14 times a day. And so I said, I can't find the pulse ox, and then just miraculously within a matter of minutes, I don't know where she came from, I never do, but she showed up at the house, dropped off, the pulse ox. That same day, I went up, I took his pulse ox, it was in the low 80s. I said, get up, we're going, we got to go to the hospital.
So, in one hand, I don't know if there's two people that would be better equipped to handle something like this. I mean, Tony, you're a nurse. Precious, you've got extensive background dealing with individuals that have severe disabilities, and you also have connections all over the medical world. I mean, so I'm sure that prepared you, but at the same time, I also believe in the moment, it probably was terrifying to just have this all of a sudden present itself and be declining so quickly.
Yeah, as a nurse, like you said, I've been a nurse for like 23 years, and I didn't want to worry her because she's so hyper, but I was kind of scared, but I didn't want to show it in front of her. But when you're sick, you can't. So as a nurse, and knowing that I was going down so quickly, I was very fearful. Up until the point I was okay, but when they said they put me in a ventilator, in my head I was losing. I was like, oh my God, a ventilator. Oh, that's not a good point to be at. And so, I had some worries in my mind because of my background. I knew what was going to happen. Like you said, sometimes it's worse to know, like ignorance is bliss, but if you know what's going to go down, it could be kind of scary at the same time.
For sure. Precious, if you wouldn't mind remembering, what was it like when they took him at the hospital?
Yeah, when we arrived at the hospital, the thing that was, I was getting antsy going to the hospital, and I'm not always the hype. I'm hype about life. I'm always not, as he is explaining it. But when we was going to the hospital, because he had been in bed for like 10 days straight, he didn't really get up but to go to the bathroom. He was laying down. But when we had to go to the car, get up and go to the car, and then when we got to the hospital, and I chose that hospital to go to, when we got to the hospital, he was hardly holding on. And so I started to, lose it, but I know I needed to still get him there. And he was leaning so heavy. This is a big dude, but he was leaning real heavy on me, and he couldn't catch his breath. 2 steps, 1 step, he could not catch his breath, and it was bad. So when we got to the hospital, they pulled him in, and I knew in the back of my head, because I watched TV, that I wasn't going to be able to go in the room with him, but I didn't know they weren't even going to let me in the hospital at all. Like, go back to your car, sit in the parking lot, whatever you do, you have to go. And so when they were saying, yeah, he's bad, he has to go. And that was actually the same day that the COVID test came back positive. So they said, well, he's COVID, you can sit and wait in the car while we just check him out. And at first I thought they're just gonna check him out, maybe give him some oxygen, and then we're going home. And so I sat outside, and then out of the blue, Cherie pops up at the hospital to sit with me because I was bugging out outside the hospital. And the longer the time he spent in there, but they were really good. That hospital was really good. They kept coming out, talking to me, giving me updates. And then finally, when they decided that, they were going to admit him, I knew I had to go home. That was the hardest drive back home ever. Part of my mind was, I was battling a lot of, thoughts that I didn't want to claim as my thoughts, Didn't know if that was going, because before they wheeled him up, they were just going to wheel him off. I said, hold up. And so I said, let me hug him. I hugged him one last time. And then when I'm driving home, I'm like, part of my mind's going, That's it, you know? And the other half is like, shut up, that's not it, you know? And it was a hard drive. And when I got home, being home alone, we live alone, there's nobody else here. And then everybody went quarantine. We got shelter in place. Nobody could come see me. I couldn't see anybody. And I'm just sitting in a house full of memorabilia, you know, looking at things and wondering if, am I going to see him put that shirt on again? Am I going to, you know, what am I doing? What am I planning? You know what I mean? What is going on? And it was so difficult. I can't even explain how that was hard. That part was hard.
I can only imagine. One thing that COVID has taught us is just there's a whole other brutal side of the virus, which is the isolation that it creates for the person that's impacted and sick, and then and hospitalized, and the loved ones that are left at home, and especially being quarantined. To your point, like there's no one that can, you know, give you a hug. There's no one that can come sit with you. I mean, you know, that's just a devastating part of the virus. Is almost the loneliness that it creates as a byproduct of it. Tony, if you will, like, so I think within 12 hours of being admitted, you were on the ventilator. So can you kind of walk us through, like, what was from that point on, what do you remember? Because it is a miracle that you came off the ventilator. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. And how you came off the ventilator was also absolutely incredible, because there was a little self-medicating that went on in there. But kind of, you know, tell us about what that is even like.
Well, like you said, I felt alone at first when I realized I had the COVID and no one could come see me. And it was just that sense of loneliness. However, the hospital I was at, they was great. And they knew I was a nurse, and they kept telling me, one of ours was going to take good care of you. And it's like I had a nurse angel. It was like this nurse, I don't know who she was, but she was, because the hospital I was in, I felt like I was in a fish tank, because there's nothing but all glass, and you're just in a room by yourself, but it's like all glass so they can watch you. And this one nurse, she kept doing me prayer signs. She kept putting up prayers for me on the taping it to the window, saying, Antonio, we got you. You're going to be strong. So I felt confidence in that, you know, a sense of faith kicked in. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to be okay. I got people praying for me. I got these nurses. No, I'm one of them. They're going to take good care of me. So that felt really good. But during my time on the ventilator, I was at 100%, meaning the machine was breathing for me, like totally. I wasn't breathing at all. Then I had the miraculous event of actually meeting and actually talking to God. And that was like a wonderful experience for me. I mean, I was on my knees, like begging for my life. And then he said, get off your knees, son. And to me, that hit me to my core, because I don't have kids, but I watch other people with their kids, and when they say son or daughter, that's a term of endearment, because he knows us, he knows me. He could have said Tony, Antonio, get up, but he said son, get up. And then the next thing was, he said, come stand on the right side of me. And I was really blown away. Then he had the angels surrounding me and surrounding him, and he said, I got you. You don't have to worry no more. I've been with you because I was doubting, you know, my faith was doubting. And to that point, he said, I've been with you every step of the way. He said, I could have been healed you when you were sick at home, but you wouldn't have a story to tell. You wouldn't have no testimony. So I had to let you go through certain things so that you could have a testimony, but you were never alone. I was always with you every step of the way, there, watching everything, watching the doctors and everything. So that was a miraculous thing for me. And knowing that, and then coming off the ventilator, I was kind of confused, of course, because I was on since Sunday. When I woke up, I thought it was Monday. And when they told me it was Thursday, I was like, what? It's Thursday. So I was really flipping out about that.
That was the first time.
That's the first time.
Where you
Yeah.
self.
Oh yeah, I was pulling stuff out. I
Yes.
put my NG tube out the head. I was pulling the ventilator off me. I started pulling mad tubes off, and then they strapped me down, and I was knocked out. I woke up. I was like trying to pull off the stuff again, but I was like strapped down to the bed. I was like, let me off, let me out. I'm trying to get out of here. I'm trying to fight for my life. And so that was an amazing thing to go through. I mean, it was very. I wouldn't want to go through it again. It was very challenging for my faith and everything like that.
Well, earlier in that day, the day that he pulled the tube out, the nurse, because Alan, you know this, and many people who were talking to me daily know this, but they had basically assumed that Tony was not going to make it. and they had called the hospice, palliative team to me and wanted his last rites, wanted me to plan for, the end. I refused to accept that, and I made them take that out of their mouth. But during that time, because they had him under palliative care, the nurses would call me and let me Zoom to see him because I couldn't be there, or talk to him on the phone, even though he was in a coma, he was fully on a ventilator. That particular day, I called him and I was just talking, I don't know, like 30, 45 minutes, just talking. He's not responding, he's on a coma. I'm just talking. He can hear me though. They said his sedation at that point was not as deep, so he could hear me, he just could not respond. And so I talked his head off. I told him funny stories about things that happened, about how Cherie and them got chased off the roof. Steve, Cherie, Dion, and Anita, they got chased off the roof by the cops because they were violating quarantine, trying to support me. And I talked about, different things that were funny and just talking. And then later on that evening, the phone rings and it always said the name of the hospital. So I was like, oh my God, it's the hospital. So I pick up and all I hear is, hello. I said, hello? He said, hey, baby. I said, hey? And I said, well, how are you calling me? He said, I pulled the tube out. And I said, you pulled the tube out? You pulled the tube out? And then I'm like, what? Where's the nurse? Where's the so-and-so? Call the doctor. And he was like, and I said, why'd you do that? And then he said, by accident, but then he started chuckling. And then, and I said, he said, well, when you called me, he said, you were saying some funny stuff and I wanted to tell you and respond. I said, no, that's not how you respond. You get well, then you respond. You don't pull tubes out. And he was like, I wanted to hear you. I wanted to talk to you. And I said, okay, good. But then that night he started to crash again and they had to put the ventilator back in. But that was, I was like, well, I won't be calling you anymore and talking to you until you're fully off the ventilator.
Don't get him going. Don't get him too excited. We got a few minutes left. One of the things I've come to know about both of you is just how powerful a faith that you share together. And also how willing you are to share vulnerability with people around you. You're willing to ask for help. You're willing to ask for prayer. And so, if you would, could you just share briefly, like, the role that faith and your support system played in helping you both kind of get through this time?
Well, faith definitely played a role in it. This is an incredible woman here. I don't know, like, when I was able to wake up and look at Facebook and stuff, I saw she was praying, but she had over 10,000 people praying for me. And that blew my mind. I was like, I don't even know 10,000 people, but yet she got the prayer words together with her faith and there's praying for every day. She was praying for me. And it just really felt so good that, I was covered in prayer.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, because I was battling fear, and there's nothing wrong with fear. Fear is a natural thing. It helps to remind us of a greater power that exists. It helps us not to totally rely on oneself. It helps us to lean on the resources, and that would be friends, family, other loved ones, community members I did not know. While I was quarantined, because once Tony got sent positive, I had to quarantine as well. So that means, and I live in a condominium, my neighbors, some of who would never met me before on different floors, were bringing me food, bringing me supplies, bringing me things, checking in on me, bringing my mail, bringing my packages, taking out the trash, all of those different things. Friends, family, those are all resources. But sometimes when everything is all good, you forget about all the things you have and how blessed you are to have them and how impactful they can be in your life. And so while I was battling fear, it was my faith that reminded me that it's okay because I feel weak. And I remember even talking to you and Alan later, and I was crying, saying, I'm not strong. This ain't me. You know, I'm not the strong one. I can't handle this. I can't handle this. I feel weak. But then I remembered, you know, that God's power is made perfect in my weakness. And so once I had that in my head, I realized I need to lean on these resources. I need to lean on these folks, and I need to call on that. All that pulled together is what brings the power of God together, you know, and I believe nobody can convince me no other way, nobody, that his healing ain't nothing to do, has nothing to do with anything but God did it. And he used all of you, and he used everybody in my community. I can't even tell you, forever, I will be forever grateful. Forever, I will be forever thankful. I can't even figure, I've been trying to think out what more powerful word I can come up with other than thank you. You guys, I have family, I have friends, I have church friends, but I want to tell you, my family of St. John's held me down. Held me down. You know, you guys will call Alan, you call me every night and prayed with me. See, nobody knows that about Alan. He's a chameleon. He can do many things. Between Rich, George, Cherie, Brittany, John, Steve, Shakira, you know, Kim, they were holding prayer sessions that I didn't know about. They were holding, I mean, I got so many texts, emails, phone calls, I mean, uncountable number of people, from board members. Linda texts me every single day to check on me. You know what I mean? So you guys have been the most impactful thing. As far as a work family, most people don't have this. I'm telling you, most people don't have this. You guys did your thing. Every email, I read every single last one of them. Every one of those lifted me up. And so I want to say thank you.
That is absolutely just so powerful. There's not enough words to do it justice beyond what you all both shared. And I want to thank you both for your willingness to share this story and be so vulnerable. It's amazing. And it was amazing just for my part to see the St. John's family rallying together around the two of you. And I know all of that was happening well before I ever showed up, and I've just been humbled to be a part of it and see that. But it's something that is unique and incredibly different with St. John's, and it's a very special part of our organization, is that sense of community and that sense of family. Tony, your story is inspirational. I think I saw a stat coming out of New York that 88% of people that went on the ventilator didn't come off of that, you know, and it's incredible. The determination, the faith that you had to overcome this adversity is nothing short of miraculous and inspirational. And so we want to give you something in honor of that. So we have a little something for you as a symbol of how inspirational you have been to us. And Precious, if you wouldn't mind pulling that out of that box and give that to him, that would be great. So.
Wow.
Well, he snuck here.
He snuck here?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
It's a big guy.
Should I open it?
Yeah, he's free to open it. Yeah, please do.
What's in there? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yes. Oh, wow. Everybody signed it.
Oh, my God.
I can show. Can you see it? I don't know if I can see it.
Yeah.
It's a shell. Make a shell.
Yo, Steve, you see this?
So there's a story behind this that, in case people aren't aware, I'll just share really briefly. So I believe Tony is a pretty big Avengers universe, Marvel's universe fan. There's in the last movie of Endgame, Captain America basically gets his ass kicked by Thanos, and Thanos destroys his shield.
Yes.
Captain America goes rolling away, and then Captain America does what Captain America always does. He gets up on his feet, he straps the shield to his arm, and he steps forward even when the armies of Thanos are coming. And I saw that. I sent that clip to Precious, and I said, Precious, Tony is Captain America. He might be getting beat up. COVID might be beating him down right now. But this man is going to stand up, and he's going to keep fighting and keep battling, and he's going to come home. And you truly have been an inspiration. And so that shield is symbolic in the sense of reminding us all of, down, but get up and keep going. And just thank you both for all that you mean to St. John's, all that you've given to St. John's, all that you've given to us, and certainly for the love of the people you support, and just for being willing to share your story. You guys are amazing.
Thank you all.
You made his day. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll work with your decor.
I'm dropping it back over there on the other side of that bridge. I'm telling you, this thing is.
And then also, by the way, the cover that it came in, shout out to Sandra, who had that custom made. It's really cool. So, but yeah, that's all set. And there's a couple also custom made masks for you guys that are there. But, I just want to thank you for taking the time. Thank you for doing this episode of Champions in the Crisis. And thank you both for being who you are. You're amazing. So thank you so very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.